A few years back, I did an audio upgrade in my pickup truck that to this day has performed incredibly. Solid bass and a custom underseat enclosure with 4 10-inch subwoofers and amazing sound performance with an active two-way component system up front. The only problem with this build is that I did it shortly after 2020, when the world was in an odd place with all sorts of supply chain issues. This unfortunately meant that I had to make some sort of odd system design choices. As an example, I ran two channel amplifiers so that I had 4 active channels to work with, but ideally I would have ran a single 4-channel amp instead. Also, I wanted to do an amplifier with a digital signal processor built in, which would have saved real estate on the amplifier rack, but with chip shortages, I couldn't get a DSP amp and instead reused a standalone DSP from a previous project. Today though, we luckily no longer have those issues, so I'm going to reconfigure this system with a few new design goals. What are those goals? What gear did I get? And what are we going to be building and installing in upcoming videos on the channel? Stick around to find out. Really quick, a thank you to our sponsor for this video, Crutchfield. If you are putting together a system plan for your vehicle, you're going to want to enter the year, make, and model of the vehicle on their vehicle selector tool on their website, which is going to allow you to shop for gear that best fits your vehicle. Additionally, for qualifying vehicles, you can also get their master sheet documents that show step-by-step how to access the speakers, head unit, etc. Backed by their US-based customer support team, they are a solid choice for sourcing your car audio gear. If you guys want to learn more and take advantage of a special offer for car audio fabrication fans, check out the links down in the video description. All right, now before we can start opening everything up, let's first talk about the design goals for this system. First off, in this system, we are looking to obtain more bass while still only remaining in that underseat area. In order to achieve more bass, we're going to need 2 different things. We're going to need more air volume under the seat, and we're also going to want more cone area. For that first challenge, I've decided to raise the rear seat using a seat lift kit, which is going to allow me to obtain some more air volume. And for the more cone area that we're going to need, I've elected to go with 3 13-inch subwoofers. More on these in just a second. Now, in terms of the speakers, we're going to look to still fill the factory locations that exist in the doors. For that reason, we're going to be doing 6.5-inch speakers in the front doors and in the rear doors. But with that said, we do want to do something a little bit more custom and special when it comes to the A-pillars. In this case, I want to do an active 3-way setup up front, which means we're going to have those 6.5-inch woofers in the doors, but I'm also going to have a 3-inch mid and a tweeter up in the A-pillars of the vehicle. Now, also, like I mentioned in the intro of the video, we want to do an amplifier that has a digital signal processor built in. This is going to allow me to save some space on the amplifier rack itself, along with, of course, all the advantages that come with doing a digital signal processor. We're going to be able to fully tune the full car audio system. Finally, I want to change things up on the head unit front, and I want to do what is called a floating screen head unit. What I really like about these floating screen style units is it allows you to have a large screen in an area that you would otherwise only be able to achieve the stock, normal, smaller OEM style screen. With that all said, let's discuss the specific gear that we've picked. All right, so first off, the head unit. In this case, this is the Sony XAV-AX8500. Again, a floating screen head unit. We're gonna open this in just a second, but really quick, I wanna touch on what these other products are right here. Unfortunately, long gone are the days that we just buy a head unit and connect it to the factory vehicle wiring without having some sort of interface, and that's what these are. We've got a fit kit here that allows us to adapt to the actual mounting provisions within the dash, but we also have sort of a brain box, if you will, along with a head unit specific wiring interface to interface with the brain box. By having this, we can use the aftermarket head unit to control vehicle specific functions. Things like the climate control system, all of the different vehicle security settings, all the settings that would normally be accessed through the factory head unit can now be accessed through our aftermarket head unit because of this brain box. And again, that's why it's advantageous to use Crutchfield to purchase your car audio gear. They're going to help you figure out exactly what items like these you need in order to properly interface. So let's take a quick look at this head unit. Now, I'm not going to open up everything in detail for the sake of the length of this video, but we are going to be doing a review on this head unit in an upcoming video. So if you do want to learn more details about this, definitely stay tuned. So here you can see the size of this large 10.1-inch screen, almost kind of like a tablet. Look at that, it's nice and thin. But the other real big advantage of this particular model is this has a ton of adjustability up and down, side to side, angling back and forth, and tilting front to back. This huge range of adjustability is quite important when it comes to adapting to the dash of a vehicle. Now I should point out there's more to this unit than just the screen here itself. You do have the actual brain that gets mounted in the dash, much like any other aftermarket receiver. But as I open this, a few advantages here. This does give us 5-volt pre-outs, so RCA level pre-outs that we're going to be able to connect to our aftermarket amplifiers. This unit does allow us to play lossless audio files. This, of course, is also going to give us our wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are an absolute must in today's car audio environment, along with a ton of other features that I'm going to save for the full review video. All right, so next up, speakers. I mentioned previously that we're going with an active 3-way setup, so that's why right here I've got the Focal Flax Evo PS165 F3E kit. Opening this up here, you can see that this gives us 2 6.5-inch woofers along with 2 3-inch mid-range drivers and 2 tweeters. So the cone material on these flax speakers is quite unique. This is a flax fiber, which is very stiff, but also incredibly light, which is ideal for speaker cone construction. In my experience, these woofers are able to create incredible amounts of mid-bass while sounding very musically accurate. That's the case for the 3-inch mid-range drivers as well. I like that these are nice and compact. They're going to be simple to install into our A-pillar location, along with the tweeters. The tweeters here are unique as well. These have an M-profile inverted dome tweeter. That M-profile really helps with the dispersion characteristics, again, helping these to sound exceptional and very, very natural. Now, in this case, this kit does have the passive crossovers, and this would allow us to use just 2 channels of amplifier power if we needed. We could have a left and a right, which divides that signal to each of these drivers, but in our case on this system here, we're actually going to be omitting these and we're going to be running active. So what that means is we're going to have a channel of amplifier power for each tweeter, for each mid-range, and for each woofer. So if you do the math, that's 6 channels of amplification that we're going to need just for the front stage of the vehicle. Now I don't have them on hand yet, but in the back of the vehicle, we're going to be doing the Focal PC165 FE kit. The woofers are very similar in design in that case, except that is a coaxial style speaker, meaning that we're going to have that tweeter mounted with the woofer itself, and we're just going to be using 1 channel of amplifier power for each of those. So in total, so far, not including the subwoofers, we're going to need 8 channels of amplifier power. And that, my friends, is why we're going with this. This is the JL Audio VXI 800/8i. If you're not familiar with the line, this is a digital signal processor built-in amplifier, and it has 8 channels of power. Let's take off some of the protective paper here. Always so satisfying. Let's get the logo on there. I'm not going to permanently stick it in place yet because I don't know the orientation that I'm necessarily going to have the amplifier in the install, which is nice, the fact that we can clock that logo differently if need be. So this amplifier gives us 100 watts times A at 2 ohms or 75 watts times A at 4 ohms. Most importantly though is again the fact that this has a digital signal processor built in, which means we can control every aspect of the system. We can control crossovers to each of our speakers. It also allows us to do something called time alignment, or to control time delay. Basically, the speed of sound is relatively slow. A speaker that is further away from us is going to take longer for that sound to arrive at our listening position than a speaker that is closer to us. So what we're doing with time alignment or time delay is we are actually delaying the signal that goes to the speakers that are closer to us, and we delay that signal by the precise amount that we need so that it emits the signal in a time that is going to allow the other speakers that are further away to be in time at our listening position. The DSP built-in also allows us to control equalization of every single speaker in the system. I really want to stress that because a lot of times people get confused. They think, hey, my aftermarket head unit has an equalizer, but you have to understand that that equalizer is controlling the system as a whole, or it only has an option to control maybe 4 channels at most. It's not allowing you to control vast numbers of speakers, which in this case, we're going to be able to control 8 different channels just off the powered section of this amplifier. And we can actually even control 2 additional channels that we're going to be using for our subwoofer amp. By being able to control the equalization, we can make fixes and change the acoustic response of each different speaker location in the vehicle. So in short, a ton of processing capability is in this amplifier, which ultimately allows us to have full control over the system. Now, I just mentioned that we can also send a DSP controlled signal out of this to our subwoofer amplifier, which doesn't have a DSP built in. And that's because in this case, we're going to be going with the RD1500/1. Unfortunately, I don't have that amplifier here to show you. And the reason for that is because it's currently installed in the vehicle. That's right, I'm going to be reusing that same subwoofer amplifier from the previous system. Unique features on that amplifier is it allows us to achieve 1500 watts of output at either 1 or at 2 ohms. That allows for a lot of system design flexibility. You can use the amplifier in multiple different system and subwoofer configurations. I also love that it's a very efficient amplifier for the amount of power that it creates, and it's also a relatively compact footprint, again allowing for easy installation within the vehicle. But of course, we've got to take a closer look at what that amplifier is powering, and that's these three bad boys right here, the three 13 TW5s. So the first thing you're going to notice about the 13 TW5 is although this is a large 13-inch subwoofer, it has an incredibly shallow mounting depth. The mounting depth on these is barely over 2.5 inches. Not only that, they also have this tab style design, which means you use mounting screws right here in this location, but this flange doesn't extend all the way around. And what that allows you to do is you can position the subwoofers incredibly close to each other, just like I have them here. The advantage of this, of course, is if you do want to do multiple subwoofers, you're not going to need as much width as you would otherwise. Another thing you always want to keep an eye out for on shallow mount subwoofers is you don't want them to have a pole vent on the back side of the magnet. The reason for that is you don't want to be worried about having a clearance for air to circulate behind the subwoofer. What's the point of that if you want to have as minimal depth as possible? With these, you could literally have a board right up against this and not have any issues. The other thing that's advantageous on these is when it comes to the needed air volume. Now on these, JL Audio does not recommend that you use a ported enclosure. These are designed specifically for a sealed enclosure, and they only have a requirement of 0.8 cubic feet sealed. Now, because I've elected to go with 3 of these, 2.4 cubic feet is a little bit larger than what I can normally achieve in the stock settings of the seat in the vehicle. But again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're going to be doing a seat lift, which is going to allow us to get closer to that needed value. With these subwoofers having the ability to handle up to 600 watts RMS, or in my case with the 3 of them here, 1800 watts RMS for the total system, we're going to have a good match with that subwoofer amplifier that we picked out. So we definitely have a lot of installation and fabrication ahead of us. Much like the last project, we're going to need to wire a custom amplifier rack and build a custom underseat subwoofer enclosure. But we are going to have some new tasks that are different than the last project on this build. In this case, we're going to make some custom speaker adapters for the woofers in the doors. We also need to build some custom A-pillars for the mid-ranges and tweeters up front. If you're new here, I'd love to have you as a subscriber so that you can stay tuned with details on this build, and be sure to check out the other related videos here on the channel. Next time you're picking out car audio gear, be sure to check out our show sponsor Crutchfield. You guys can learn more and get a special offer at the link down in the video description. A big thanks to them, along with Jerry and the Patreon membership team, and of course you guys for tuning in and watching.